LiberalViewer presents.
So there was a lot of coverage last month of the Obama administration's efforts at arms control, which culminated in a major meeting of world leaders in Washington to promote the control of nuclear weapons. But one aspect of that event I curiously only saw covered on Comedy Central's The Daily Show was the fact revealed in this clip.
This meeting was called to find a way to eliminate the threat posed by nuclear weapons. It was the most heads of state convened by a U.S. president since the UN General Assembly was established more than 60 years ago. And what was that assembly's very first resolution? It was, I kid you not, the establishment of a commission to deal with the elimination of atomic weapons and all their major weapons adaptable to mass destruction.
Now, I understand Jon Stewart's reaction to finding out that eliminating nuclear weapons was the United Nations' first order of business at the initial meeting of the General Assembly more than 60 years ago, because I felt the same way when I found out, which is why, when I was getting my undergraduate degree in history, I actually decided to write my senior essay on the failed attempt at international control of atomic weapons at the end of World War II. Now, my approach in that paper, available at liberalviewer.com/nukes, was in a way kind of hypothetical, because the real reason international control of atomic weapons failed and the Cold War started can probably be summed up in two words: Joseph Stalin. Stalin was a paranoid megalomaniac who was unlikely to open up his Soviet Union for inspections or give up his nuclear program, both of which would have been required under the American proposal that came to be known as the Baruch Plan after American negotiator Bernard Baruch. And in fact, in my college essay, I cited historian Michael Mandelbaum writing, quote, "Bloody internal purges, 2 invasions within 25 years, and an ideology that posited a death struggle with the capitalist nations of the world all fed Soviet distrust for the liberal precepts in which the Baruch Plan was grounded. The Soviet government did not wish to relinquish its sovereign powers. Its chief post-war aim was to reinforce them. It was intent in 1946 and afterwards upon closing its country off from the rest of the world, not opening it up," unquote. But even if you believe America's Baruch Plan for international control of atomic weapons was doomed by the paranoia of Stalin and the Soviets, the American negotiators had their own attitude problems, as I found doing the research for my senior essay, going through boxes and boxes of declassified materials in the collected papers of Bernard Baruch at the Princeton University Library in New Jersey, where I found a kind of Western Christian snobbery on the American side. And I use the word Christian even though Bernard Baruch was Jewish, because the Christian perspective was explicit in the secret 1946 memo that argued, quote, "Russians will not trust any foreigner unless he is in jail, dead, or a member of the Communist Party. Lying, cheating, and other forms of deception are perfectly common in their dealings across the table. The Occidental or Christian concepts of fairness, reasonableness, or equity are completely absent from the minds of Soviet negotiators. Similarly, logic and reason, which Occidentals have come to regard as more civilized means of settling differences of opinion, are meaningless to the Russians," unquote. And this American emphasis on the Soviet Union being non-Christian and non-Western in nuclear negotiations didn't just start up after the war, because another place I looked for primary source material for my senior essay was in the declassified documents in the collected papers of Henry Stimson, the American Secretary of War during a critical part of the Manhattan Project, when the few people who knew about the bomb, or S-1 as it was sometimes called, began discussing plans even before any successful tests to use the bomb as a policy lever against the Soviets. And I even found a page in Secretary Stimson's handwritten notes for a talk with President Roosevelt in August 1944 in which Stimson wrote of, quote, "the necessity of bringing Russian organization into the fold of Christian civilization," unquote, and, quote, "the possible use of S-1 to accomplish this," unquote. And not only were Stimson and Truman talking about using the bomb to change the basic nature of America's ostensible wartime ally, but as I argued in my video Hiroshima Right or Wrong, the way America used the bomb on Japan with very little consultation with Stalin beforehand only exacerbated Soviet paranoia, and that left the United States with a special moral responsibility for the legacy of the Manhattan Project that I was glad to see President Barack Obama recognize last year in a speech in Prague about the future of nuclear disarmament, where he said,
"As the only nuclear power to have used a nuclear weapon, the United States has a moral responsibility to act. We cannot succeed in this endeavor alone, but we can lead it. We can start it. So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons. I'm not naive. This goal will not be reached quickly, perhaps not in my lifetime. It will take patience and persistence. But now we, too, must ignore the voices who tell us that the world cannot change. We have to insist, yes, we can.
And one of the things I found most interesting about that speech in Prague was the way Obama's vision of international control contained the same basic elements I remember from my study of the attempt at the end of World War II, which Obama laid out like this.
The basic bargain is sound. Countries with nuclear weapons will move towards disarmament. Countries without nuclear weapons will not acquire them, and all countries can access peaceful nuclear energy.
And that seems like a good deal for everyone because except for maybe something like stopping an asteroid from hitting the planet, nuclear bombs are not defensive weapons, and pre-atomic warfare is horrific enough to serve as a deterrent without having to include destroying all life on Earth as one of the possible outcomes. At least that's what I think, but I want to know what you think. Isn't the ultimate elimination of nuclear weapons in the interest of everyone on Earth? And given the Obama administration's commitment to that goal, will the United States lead the way to nuclear disarmament as the world's sole superpower today more effectively than it did when the United States was briefly the world's sole superpower at the end of World War II?
I YouTube, you decide.